Hi everyone, welcome to Neve's channel. I learnt from experience last time that best to do a flip through when you're halfway through your journal instead of the full way through. So this is my Dylusions journal that I've been working on. I haven't decorated the front cover yet, but I will get there. So this is my second art journal. I love the Dylusions journal because of the size and the quality of the paper. It makes it so much easier to do all sorts of things. On my first page here, I've just sort of written a bit of a manifesto to myself about what I want my art journal to be about. I want this one sort of started off as my use it up journal, paint, stencils, all my mess goes in here. And it's a journal I want to try stuff out on. Because of the nature of the journal, I wasn't afraid to mess stuff up or worry if things got messy or if it didn't work. I have the mindset about it that it's my experimenting journal, and that's actually been really freeing for me. One of my big goals in this journal is I want to do a lot of work on my colour wheel and using colour, and particularly using colours I haven't used before or working in monochrome. So I thought if I write it all out, it gives me a goal to achieve. Now I started this page off, I actually really hate this page, but I think it's just because I was in a really negative frame of mind when I did it. It's based on the song No Good Deed from the musical Wicked. So using a lot of greens, which again isn't my favourite go-to colour, but the song lyrics certainly spoke to me when I was doing this page, and there's some journaling about why I was feeling so negative in the background in the silver. Again, working out my emotions. I was having a really rough day this day, and I'd done the background and yeah, just wanted to paint over it with black, so I let some of the colour peek through and just sort of wrote down how I was feeling and why I was so annoyed this day when I was doing this page. Again, these first three pages were sort of done late 2016, and then I left this journal for a long time before coming back to it. So this is for the new year. This purple was a polish that I hadn't used before, and I really liked how it went on the page, but I found it really hard to actually put anything over it, so I ended up with washes and doing bits and pieces. These last few elements have only been added in the last few days, and it makes me a bit happy with the page. I still want to do something with this because it's too plain, I think, for me. This was a page that I did working on a class from teaching my kids at school, working on Picasso faces. So it was done because I didn't have a black journal and I wanted to use chalk pastels with it. I just painted the background black and put the chalk pastels over the top, and I was really happy with how it worked, and I really liked the mirrored effect on the next page. And it was great bringing in a working document for my kids to see that I do this at home, that, you know, it is a practice, there's messes in here and so on. It actually really helped the kids along with their artistic process. This is where I start to get happier with my journal, because it's sort of reverting back to what I used to do. The backgrounds here was just testing out Dylusion sprays, the Colour Burst watercolour powders, there's texture paste from Prima, and just all sorts of different bits and pieces just splodged onto the background, practicing using some new stamps that I got because the texture paste kind of looked like a cracked wall, so plopped that on. This page, when I did this, I found out that I was pregnant, so couldn't tell anyone at the stage, but I was excited about it, so this is my way of sort of celebrating the news, I suppose. Now this journal isn't done in chronological order, and as I said, it's a journal that lots of pages have been sort of stamped and backgrounds have been done. So these pages have actually only been done in the last few weeks, and it was done for the Use It Up, Fill It Up journal challenge that's on Instagram. So there was paint and smudges in the background. I've collaged all over the background, and then using the silhouettes, this is just from a fashion magazine cutout, stuck down and then putting the black gesso around it and stamping over the top. So yeah, I've really enjoyed doing this use it up, fill it up challenge, because it's getting me to use up a whole heap of papers and so on that have been sitting in my stash for so long. This poppy has been sitting fussy cut, I think, in my collage stash for about 10 years. There's basic grey papers, which I don't think is still manufacturing at this stage, but I've still got a huge stack of their papers. This is a collage image from Frankie magazine that I've cut out. Stickers that I've had, again, hanging around for years. So it's really freeing that I can just throw everything on the page and work with what I've got. And I'm really enjoying that, and it's sounds still silly, but it's a really mindless exercise. I don't need to think about it, because I know if it doesn't work, that's fine. I can go back and work on it again until I'm happy with it. This page was a really quick page. I had this scribbly background, colouring it in, and I had underneath this picture, and you can kind of see it down on the legs, this mask was put down and painted around with the black. I was never particularly happy with it, and on the James Burke Creative Facebook site, on his YouTube, he has been doing some collage illustrations, and he did this with his husband Steve. This is Steve's collage piece, and they uploaded the PDF so that anyone could use it. So when I put it on this page, it really reminded me of sort of girl fiesta dress, and I loved it. So it just finished it off. So again, a page that's been sitting around for ages, just by waiting for the right time or the right image to go on, it really helped. This is a page that I'm still not sure if I'm going to go back and work. It's using the oxides in the background and then the black oxide over the top. It's got the leftover mask impression from the other side. I'm not sure if it just needs a quote or if I need to go nuts on it. So let me know in the comments below if you've got any good ideas for it. This is a page that I keep coming back to if I want to work but I don't have an idea. Is drawing some mandalas. So again, the background is just the colour bursts, just practicing with the different colours. Now it does frustrate me somewhat because the colours are so intense that it is hard to see what's going on in the page, but doing the mandalas itself is a really, really peaceful, mindless exercise again, and it means I feel like I've achieved something even if I haven't finished an entire page or an entire spread. These were 2 mandalas. These are the first ones I actually did, and again I did them for my class at school. We were doing the primary school kaleidoscope gallery exhibition was coming up, so children's work can be actually displayed in a real gallery, and the theme was balance. Now, because we've got such a crowded curriculum, I decided that we should maximise our efforts. We were doing symmetry in class for maths, so we worked on doing this, so being symmetrical, dividing it up. We were working at fractions at that stage too, so dividing stuff up into 8ths and 16ths. So it worked really well, covering a lot of stuff, and we ended up some beautiful artwork. So working with the black, and then I got my paint pens and my coloured Sharpies out to do this page too. This was playing with some Dina Wakley paints in a colour combination that I wouldn't usually go. Yellow is not, I say yellow is not my favourite colour, but in actual fact I've been using a lot of yellow in the last 2 years in my work because it does pop off the page really nicely. And this was on a gesso page using scrapers to scrape the paint. It was supposed to be exploring using white space, but I wasn't very successful with that because I ended up with tiny little bits of white space and actually had to flick some over the top to get some white back in the page. And it was using the paint straight out of the little tubes with the fine point nibs to write on the page, and then pressed it together to get the mirror image. So it was a good play page. and I liked pressing the paints down because I ended up with the texture when I pulled the pages apart. These pages have been played with and played with and played with, and I think I'm finally happy with them. In the background, it was very, very painted, and I got married in December, and I wanted to record my vows in an artistic way. So I'd written them in the background, and I hated it. So then I chopped a big circle out of it, because that's what you do apparently. I actually chopped something that I really liked that was on another page that I'll show you later on. So that was sitting there, and then I painted it black and tried my shimmer sprays with it, and because it was the sprays, anything I put over it, the inks came up through. And last night I was playing with making some watercolour backgrounds, which I really liked. So, and I got a galaxy stencil. So I was cleaning it off to get the impression in the back. Thought it looked like a universe, so I went with that, with the quote, eventually everything connects. The piece here is stuck in, it's on watercolour paper, and again from the James Burke Creative YouTube site, doing his Easter swatch dolls, and that was really fun, and that was using the Jane Davenport Brights palette, which again I was just swatching out, I hadn't used before, and I fell in love with doing watercolours on real watercolour paper. This is the page I ended up. That's the circle that I cut out from here. So it's the Dina Wakley stamps and doing some bits and pieces with the colour bursts in the background. This is just a page that I really liked what happened in the background with it. And this is where I ended up putting my vows in. And the reason I did it here was because this is the actual cake topper I made for our wedding cake. So it's an illustration that I came up with and did the cutting out, and I wanted to keep it safe somewhere and tied it all together. So I'm actually really happy with how that page has come together, and I quite like having the torn page and how it flips. This has also been my practice pages for doing faces. I've been trying to draw, I was originally trying to draw a face a day. That hasn't worked, so trying to draw a face a week. And if you look at my other journal flip through, you can sort of see how the progression's gone. These were my original drawings where they're a bit scary. I was using acrylic paints, doing them over painted backgrounds, so they had funky colours underneath. While it was fun to do, for a beginner I was finding it a bit scary with the coloured undertones. I'd like to go back and do it with the sort of purples and the blues in the background, feeling a little bit more confident with what I'm doing, but it was fun. This page I really liked, and I was doing some foiled transfer prints. This is one of my most successful ones, and I absolutely loved it, and I just loved how the colours contrasted on the page. These are more of my scary drawings. So this is an original, one of my first ever ones. This was one a few weeks later. The eyes are still very scary and still in that sort of almond shape, but I'd sort of worked on the hair a little bit, and I was happy with how the lips had turned out and how the nose had turned out. So works in progress, basically. This is another page for the Use It Up, Fill It Up challenge. I'd had this colouring page for years. I'd loved it, but didn't know what to do with it or where to stick it. It was trying out the chameleon pens where you get the different shadings, so you can sort of start from very light and get to the darker colours. So it's all coloured using alcohol markers. The background was me trying to sort of work in analogous colours, so the blue purple ranges, so the neighbours on that side, trying out a few different pen types in the background to see if some sparkle markers would go over the acrylic paint, using my mark making tools to write into the thick paint in the background. So it's just a page that had been sitting there and I wasn't sure what to do, and I love how the colours pop on the page, and using up some old stickers that I had. Again, I think they're about 10 years old, when I was doing a lot of scrapbooking. They've just been sort of sitting in there waiting for something to use. This is another page that's probably half finished. It was trying out the Jane Davenport the flesh portrait paints to work, and putting some mermaid's markers over the top, and trying to do work with a turned face. So again, needs a bit of practice, needs more depth and more shadowing put into it, but it's something I'll probably go back to and work again in the future. This is playing with a new stencil from Kinder Creations, which actually gives you the shadowing and the highlight in it, and using paint over pens to go over the top. This page I love, and again it's for the Use It Up, Fill It Up challenge, and it's using a photocopy of some of my paint background papers that I can't bear to tear up. So I think it's this one that's been used in the background, using the collage sheets in the background, and doing lots of layering of stencils and using the really bright colours. This page has been sitting here for a long time, but I think I'm going to leave it the way it is. I keep going to add stuff to it or add a focal image to it, but I think I really like it the way it is, and I really love, I've used a mermaid marker in one of the sparkly colours over the top, and it just sort of lifts that, makes the love the focus. I've got this video on my YouTube channel, so using a lot of collage in the background, using texture pastes and spreads, trying to get that drippy ink effect going over it, and using the Tim Holtz foam stamps. So it's a bit hard to see with the shine on it, but it's very textured and I'm really pleased with it. This has to be one of my favourite pages, however, though, and there's another video of this on my YouTube channel. So it's called Flowers in Her Hair, using textured paste through a stencil and then using inks over the top to flood that image. This face is actually a magazine image. It's actually the one from here, so I've just used the offcuts to make the mask over here. This is one of the first pages I did at the start of the year to get me back into journaling this year, and it's called Unstoppable, and basically I decided that it was time for me to take some time for myself to get back into my artistic journey. And I've used the Opals embossing enamels on the top, which is a product we used to manufacture. Again, sort of making a tie between what I used to do and what I want to do in the future. So I'm really pleased with how this page came up, and the lovely thing about it was it was for the range for the Dina Wakley challenge competition for January, and I was lucky enough to be chosen for one of the prizes. So yeah, it was a positive start in my art journaling career again. This page was done for the Dylusions art journal competition, and the challenge was to use teal, turquoise and lemon, yellow, and use an animal on the page. So it was really pushing me out of my comfort zone. They're not colours I would usually use. While I really love the Dylusions style of materials and working, the illustrations to it aren't my style, I suppose. They're quite cartoony, so I don't actually own many of her stamps and so on. However, I own all her inks and all her paints, but I like how I use the stencil in the background to put the writing in. This page is again a page that has been reworked and reworked and reworked. It started off in the background, we can sort of see the rainbow colours with testing out some new Dina Wakley colours. Then the Use It Up, Fill It Up challenge came along. So I did lots of collage. I saved my Jane Davenport labels from her watercolour palette, stuck those down because it's kind of rainbowy, gessoed over the top and used the foam stamps over the top, and I love this page. Just really speaks to me. This is another page looking at the monochromes, looking at purples. I'm not really a purple person. I wasn't feeling the best when I was doing this. My brain was a jumble of emotions, so I had the Jane Davenport face in the background, all feeling different things, but all being connected. So it's it is what it is, basically. I can look at it and know how I was feeling on the day. I'm not going to go back and touch it or do anything to it, but it's not a favourite page. This, however, I really do like. This is done again for a Dylusions challenge where you had to use greens and arrows. And it was based on a page I saw James Burke Creative did on his YouTube channel with stamping into the hair, and this is one of his digi stamps, and I really loved it. Greens, again, aren't a colour I tend to go to, but I really liked how it all worked together and how it flowed together and sort of made her look like poison ivy in the background. These words actually move, which I like as well, just sort of gives that interactive feel to the page. These two pages, we're going back to my roots of using magazine images as a base and then working on from that. So again, this background is old stamps, colours, inks, mermaid markers, trying stuff out, and they work together really well for this page, and just drawing over her face with some gold ink. There is a YouTube video to explain how I did this, but it's using distress oxides in the background and some microglaze, and then gessoing over her image, drawing over the top and stenciling over the top just to make the image mine. It's never going to be mine, it's a photograph, but make it look more painterly, I suppose, is what it's looking for. This is another page of using up all the scraps. This is Christine Adelphi something, I can't remember her name, I'm very sorry, but I just used to love these. It's when foils used to be in, and then they went out of fashion and they've come back in again. I've had this in my stash for so long and just loved it and never used it, and I thought, no, it's time to use it up, so I stuck it onto this page, and it's just added that lovely hit of silvers, golds to it. This page again was a work in progress. Lots of stuff was added to it, then re-added to it, then added again. Collage papers in the background, I wasn't particularly happy with them. I put some texture paste over the top and it wasn't textury enough. I wanted to get some drips down, and I've actually used alcohol inks and alcohol, the mixtive, gold mixtive over the top, which I quite like the effect of, and because of the paper of the Diana Wakely journal, it can stand up to that sort of abuse, plus the fact there's a whole heap of collage on there too, so it hasn't leaked through to the pages before, which has been fantastic. This is just from an old diary, Leonardo da Vinci diary, that I've cut out and then sort of tried to extend on the image. This is one of my favourite pages. Again, just collage in the background, playing around with it. These pieces were for another page further on that didn't get used, and I really like how they added to the piece. They weren't originally going to be used on it, and then they sort of fell onto the page. It's like, yep, they're perfect. And then just going back and putting a bit of pink to sort of just tie the page together. This page I love. You can see this is sort of how my backgrounds turn out. So there's old stencils cleaning off where it's torn and stuck it back down again. I don't know what I'm going to do with it. I'm a bit loath to touch it because I really like it, but I'll get round to it at some stage. This is another one that using magazine image and colouring over the top. She knew the power of her mind, and so she programmed it for success. I don't know what happened to my inks there. I'm not sure if I used my archival ink, but it's actually sunk into the page somewhat, so the blacks died away. It was really quite strong when I first did it, so I might go around it with a black pen just so it stands out again. These two pages we're playing with the distress inks in the background, distress oxides, sorry. So they've got that sort of soft pastel colour, and I haven't done much with them. I've had hit and miss success with the oxide inks. I love them. I love the brightness of them and the opacity of them. When I've put them over other stuff, though, particularly acrylic paint, they've paled down considerably. So just using them straight on the page is obviously the way to do it, because they've worked really, really well. This page is another one for the Use It Up challenge. Lots of collage in the backgrounds. I use the Distress ink, oxide inks in the background to make this sort of watercolor effect, and then stamping over the top. And I think there's also, this is a video on my YouTube channel. This page was a Use It Up page too, with lots of crayons and inks in the background, oranges and blues, which again I don't usually use. But I just got the Dina Wakley Scribbly Figure stamp sets, which we all have a story to tell, and she talked about how that was her sort of tribute to the Me Too hashtag, and that spoke to me, and it gave me a chance to write my story as well. So, which is why it's very dark, but it was powerful for me to have that chance to write it down. This was just throw everything at the page, get your Dylusions inks out and have fun, which I did. I've had these dolls sitting here for ages. This is a piece of burlap from my other journal that had been cut out and I wanted to use it in some way. And this was from a colouring page from the Flow magazine. So just using the paint over pens to pop onto that. And again, not a colour I'd ever use, but I'm using more and more of it, and I found once I had the pink out on the desk I couldn't put it away, and that's how it ended up on this page. So this challenge was again for the Dylusions challenge. Use pinks and snowflakes. A combination that I'd never thought of, but I really, really like this page. And while the border doesn't actually go with it, I like how it's bordered and how it's got quite a chunky frame to it, and the frame's been done with modelling paste, so it stands out a little bit, and as have the snowflakes in the background. And I just love these animal images. So that's it. So this is my journal so far. Got this page to work on, texture paste on some of these other ones. So stay tuned for part 2 when it's all finished, which will be later on in this year. Thanks for watching. I hope you found something that you enjoyed, and I will see you on my channel again soon. Catch you later.